All right, so of course I'm Sakura A, and I'm from Boxing Playhouse.
Yay!
Yes! We want to congratulate all of our Hall of Famers that's getting inducted this time, so let's give them all a so this is called the roundtable. This is the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame's annual roundtable in which they discuss a number of boxing topics and various things in the industry that, you guys want to talk about. So, of course, on our distinguished panel, so handsome, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have Steve Canton, President of the Hall of Fame and owner of SJC Gym in Fort Myers, Florida. And then we have the legendary Joe Cortez. Amazing person, International Hall of Famer, and he is coined with the phrase, fair but firm.
Right.
Don't be too firm with me now, okay? Then of course we have Jesus Escalera.
Yeah.
Also a heavyweight champion in the house today. I'm so proud of this guy. I mean, when I first met him, he was just starting out. He's like, hey, you need to sit down. You guys need a table. Come sit at our table. And that's at other people's events. And then he's like, hey, I think I'm going to have my own promotion. So, we kind of pressured him into letting us have a chance to work with him at Boxing Playhouse. So thanks so much for the opportunities you've opened up for me as well. And he is also getting inducted this year, so he is an inductee under the promotion.
Yeah.
He's also going to be it's going to be the first time that an uncle and a nephew will be inducted into the Florida Hall of Fame.
Nice.
And then, of course, we have Snowell, who is known as the trainer of champions.
All right!
Yeah. A title like that. That's what I want. I want a title like that one day. Trainer of champions. He's trained some of the world's best and even had opportunities to work in different camps with Muhammad Ali and other different people like Mike Tyson. So he's a great contributor to the sport of boxing. And then of course we have our very own Florida boxing referee and judge, because people forget he can judge too. And that's Christopher Young. Emilio was working very hard last night in those competitive fights.
All right, Chris!
Yes. And we have the amazing, sexy Mr. John Fernandez. With us as the moderator today.
I'll take it.
The amateur boxers for SJC's boxing gym. So this is where he likes to do his extra volunteer work. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Shakira. Thank you so much. A big hand for Shakira. Playhouse Boxing. Playhouse Boxing in the house. Okay, so we're going to get started here. What a great panel. Just exciting to be here. I'm glad you're a part of it. The main focus throughout boxing at every level is about protecting the fighters. We see that a lot in amateur boxing. We also see it in the pros. We have two great referees, and I mean Chris Young is great, even though he's young and new to the game, really, compared to Joe. I consider him one of the great ones. Of course, we all know how great Joe Cortez is. This first question is for the whole panel, but we'll start with you two. Joe, I'd like you to start out. When do you stop a bout? How do you make that decision?
Well, one of the first things you want to do is do your homework before you come to an event. It's always been trained. I tell the young referees today, it's good to try to study your fighter before you start refereeing a fight. See what kind of habits they have with the new fighters. They use their head a lot, and hold a lot, especially holding low blows. Hitting the 21 is down. A fighter has a tendency of spitting out the mouthpiece. Then, of course, you got to see his record. What kind of record does he have? You know, so it's good to know if a fighter, you know, he fought the last 2 to 4 times, he's always maybe 2 or 3 of those fights, he's lost by technical knockout or knockout, or does he get cut a lot? You have to watch out what these things you should have do your homework, know exactly, you know, what kind of fight you're going to be involved with that night. So when you address the fighters in the dressing room, you give them the instructions, that's where you take control back in the dressing room, by giving you firm instructions, one-on-one with the fighters, especially with the main event fighters, one-on-one. Last night I was pretty impressed the way Christopher and the other referees were giving the instructions to the fighters. They had the group in general, because they had the red corner and the blue corner last night, these rooms, and they had to address all the fighters at the same time, which is okay. But when you do a main event or championship fight, you could one-on-one with the fighter. Let's say like Mike Tyson. I remember I refereed Tyson 8 times, including his last fight. And I remember going into our dressing room telling Mike Tyson, Mike, you know, I'll be your referee for this fight. I've done you in the past before. I know that you have a good record and you're normally a pretty decent, clean fighter. I know you have a tendency sometimes of losing your cool. And I'll tell you right now, Mike, if you start using any unsportsmanlike conduct, any rough tactics, I'll take points from you, or if I got to disqualify you, Mike, I will do it. And I've done you in the past with no problem. Hopefully tonight we have no problem. And that was his last fight. I refereed him against Larry Holmes. I refereed him against Maurice Fraser. When he remembered Dr. Maurice Fraser 30 seconds in the first round. My instructions were longer than the fight. But anyway, when I refereed him against Canton McBride's last fight, I told him, Mike, you know, I'm here to protect you. You could be the best man on the planet. But one thing is my job, first and foremost, is safety of the fighter. I'm making sure that you or your opponent coming out of this fight nice and clean, go home safe. That's what I'm there for, to protect you at all times. First and foremost is your safety, making sure everything's okay. Now, Mike Tyson that night, he got a little frustrated with Kevin McBride. You'll recall, Kevin McBride was about 6'2", and he was a boxer with a long reach and boxed Mike Tyson from the outside. I started getting Mike Tyson upset. Mike Tyson, I can see where Mike Tyson was biting on the thumb of his glove. He was biting it throughout the fight. It was like from the third round on, he was biting his glove with the thumb. I know Mike was a little upset because he couldn't do what he wanted to do with his opponent. He thought he could put him away real quick, and that didn't happen with Kevin McBride. In the 6th round, Mike was so frustrated, he started using the headbutt. And I mean, he was also trying to break Kevin McBride's arm in the clinches inside. I had to warn him, but when he headbutted Kevin McBride, he cut him. I called time, okay, and I grabbed Mike Tyson by the wrist, and I went to the judges. 2 points, headbutt. I got a headbutt, 2 points. 2 points he does it. Look, all 3 judges, one of them, I pulled him by the arm, all 3 judges around the ring, and let him know. I said, Mike, you gotta stop that now. I gotta disqualify you, I'll do it. At the end of the round, Kevin McBride was putting the pressure on him and pushing him down, and the bell rang, and Mike Tyson went down on the canvas. I don't know, you're not supposed to put their hands on the fighter, but they're down, whether they slip or whatever, you got to get up on your own. He wasn't getting up. I know he was so tired. He was exhausted, more than hurt. Anyway, he got up. Finally, when he got up, I walked into his corner. Jeff Fennick was the straightener that night. I can see Jeff Fennick. I took him to the corner. I was ready to stop it on my own, but Jeff Fennick went like this, yo. I waved it off. That was it. Mike had the last
Okay,
fight.
Joe, that's really good. Great information there of how you stopped the fight for Mike Tyson,
Right.
what you saw there. Chris, what would you like to add to that?
First off, I would concur with my colleague over here. I go to University YouTube and I go ahead and try to get some information on boxing. When I'm in there with the fighters in the back, I'm looking at him as his whole. You understand? I'm seeing him as his 100% best.
Hey, Chris.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Just bring the microphone up. So we're picking it up on the audio.
No problem. What I said is that when I'm in the back with the fighters in the locker room, I'm examining him or her, and I'm seeing him at 100% best. So I got their film of how they operate when they get hurt, how they react under adversity. I see how their physical, mental, where they at, in their life. And once I'm in the ring, I'm looking at their body language. Pretty really want to fight? Are they overly fatigued? Are they taking a lot of punishment? You know, I'm trying to find this little, like he's reading a story. You know, is he instinctively defending himself? Now, when people talk about instinctive is like holding. He's thinking. Is he fouling? Is he running? Following? That's thinking. When they're fighting back, that's instinctive. So if a fighter can still be fighting back or have probably fighting back and still be sort of concussed, and then sometimes they have that glaze over their eyes, especially after a hard knockdown. And if a hard knockdown means having to walk left and walk right, and make sure they pass the sobriety test. That's what I call it. And if their legs and match their eyes, then I call a fight. I try to give the fighter every opportunity to be able to fight himself. I think he's a warrior. He trained hard to get to this moment, but at the same time to have a responsibility. You know, and another key sign, and more of a late sign, if their pupils are uneven. You know, y'all won't be able to see that. Guy in the crowd, but I'll be able to see that. Is he vomiting? Those are little things that, you know, we see. If the vomiting, we assume there's something going on in his inner ear or in his head, we'll stop the fight. Is he weakening? See, sometimes, you know, you'll see their energy and their strength zaps from them. And, okay, I have to pull. But you see that normally through a course of the round. And stuff. So there's other things that I try to see before I stop a fight. I may actually maybe show me something, but the body language says a lot. Especially if they get knocked down, they go straight to the ropes, their arms are on the ropes. Something's not right. Because most fighters instinctively put their guard up. Or can they walk in a straight line? You know, are they unsteady? Yeah, I mean, that's why we can ask the fighters to walk left or walk right, because normally instinctively in the gym, you can walk a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
But when you move left and move right, it calls thinking. Get these different sides of the brain, so can he do it? And if he's gonna let you slide, well, we stop the fight.
So it used to be you'd have them come forward,
Yes.
Now they're coming forward and moving to the side.
Yes, all depends on the knockdown. A flash knockdown, bam, he's dropped. 3 seconds later, he's up. Okay, I know you're all right. I got to still go through my motion and still get in the full 8 count. All right, sir, come walk towards me, wipe your gloves, let's box. If he gets hit pretty hard where, you know, leg falls underneath him, I'm gonna have to give him that sobriety.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much for that perspective. I'm interested now in hearing the perspective from trainers. We've got 3 trainers here. From your perspective as a trainer, when is the right time to stop a fight? What do you look for?
Well, first of all, I want to thank each and every one of y'all for coming here to listen to this today. Give yourself a round of applause.
Yeah.
And we're all boxing people here. You don't come here to the Hall of Fame and see all of these guys without participating in boxing. And congratulations to each and every one of you for going in. And to have a Hall of Fame referee like Joe Cortez here. You know, the signs of fatigue and being hurt, you know that in a gym. You get to see, you get to experience it. So you can identify it from seeing guys, you know, guys get hurt sparring. And if you don't have keen eyes and keen eyesight, it can drift into a fight where you will see the same signs you see in the gym of that person getting hurt or injured. You'll see it in a fight. So when you look at a referee, what they're saying is absolutely right. They do come in the dressing room. They do talk to them. They try to identify certain things of a fighter's behavior. Okay? And I'm going to tell you like an old-time Rick told me. He said, I couldn't walk a straight line so I get hit upside the head, you don't have to get it. But these things, they happen. And, you know, most of the time in boxing, with all the activity that goes on, with fights on all different types of levels, from the club level to the medium range with small television streaming, into the championship fights. the officials that work around this country, judges and referees, they're good. And people don't want to give them the credit that they deserve for being good and to make the right call at the right time. What happens with a lot of fights and big fights, you got people pulling for this side and that side. So if a referee sees a guy in real trouble, because you gotta realize referees are right there on the scene face to face. They can see things that we can't see as a trainer in the corner because they're right there where the action's at. And, you know, a lot of times we may not like the call because we're on the bad end of the call, but at the end of the day, we have to respect the call.
Aaron,
because it's about safety.
love that point. Let's hear Jesus's follow-up on that. You respect the call of the referee as a trainer?
Yes. Unfortunately, last night, I had to respect the call. But my fighter that fought Chris Morris fighter, you know, is you have to play both sides of the sport. To me, it's always it's a one-way because if you lose the fight, you can learn from it. You won already. You're doing something that a lot of people have not had the opportunity to or wish they could do something. The sport is real criticism. A lot of people always have something negative to say. If it's a referee, the judge, the recorder, why they didn't stop it, why the referee stopped it, why the fighter didn't keep going. And a lot of people don't praise the sport for as much as these people from all different positions put into it. But we love this sport, that's why we keep doing it.
But does that go into your mind when you think of a fight being stopped? That's a good point, by the way.
You're upset, you're just disappointed at the moment because you work so hard, and sometimes you know what that fighter still has in it. But, like you said, safety is more important. The referees and judges know something we don't know. They're seeing their eyes. We're about 15 to 20 feet away in some cases. So sometimes, as a coach, former coach myself, you get passionate so much of what your guy's doing, you lose sight of what the other guy's doing to your guy. And I didn't learn that until I became a referee in the Just USA Boxing, when I had to put that different head on and see it, not from a trainer, not from a fighter, but from a referee's point of view. And that's when it opens your eyes.
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay, that's a great point, Jesus. Steve, let's get your input as a trainer for 40 plus years now.
Everybody here made great points, and I really appreciate that. Great input from the great panel here. I'm going to be very brief. To me, you hear people say, you know, you better stop the fight early than too late. It's better to stop it too soon than too late. I 100% disagree with that because there's a proper time to stop the fight. Not too early or not too late. Stopping a fight too early, you're jeopardizing a career and what's going to be in the future of the particular fighter. Stopping the fight too late, you got a health issue, you got an injury issue. So there's a proper time. Now here's the difference. Guys on the panel here who are in the ring and top-notch officials at work know the proper time. They're close to the action. They see the eyes of the fighter. They know when's the time to stop it. So if they stop it properly, that's the right time to stop it. But those who say, I'd rather stop it too soon than too late, totally disagree with that because you have people that are really not competent sometimes in the ring as a referee. And everybody has seen the ones that aren't skilled or competent or experienced, and they panic and stop letting the fight off way too soon. That's not good for the sport, but that's the only 3 cents I said, 2 cents. This is the only 3 cents that I put into it, because these guys are great. I don't have much sense, they say. So that's what I got to say.
Okay. All right, thank you, Steve. Okay, now this comes up a lot when I'm talking to people. When I told people I was going to be a panelist and ask this question about stopping a fight, the Meldrick Taylor fight comes up. Meldrick Taylor, Julio Cesar Chavez gets stopped. Everyone in here probably knows that story. A couple seconds left in the fight. You guys, each one of you, go ahead, start with you, Steve, please. Just 30 seconds. What's your take on that call in terms of stopping a fight?
100% think think that fight should never have been stopped for a couple of reasons very quickly. First of all, a referee and a fighter should know a 3-minute clock in their head. And the 1-minute rest. We all do in the sport. Okay, if you're looking at in that particular fight, you got Mildred Taylor in the corner. They were doing an experimental light, a red light and a green light up in the corner that tells you the countdown started, 10 seconds to go on the round. Okay, so that's, if you didn't even know the clock, which you should, you got a knockdown in the corner, the fighter gets up, and you know that not one single punch can't be thrown before the final bell will ring. It should never have been stopped, because his health is not in jeopardy. If he gets hit again, yes it is. And if there's time left in the round, it could be dangerous, you should stop it. However, you should also know, being cognizant of your surroundings and my feelings, are two things. One, you know the 3-minute clock. But even if you didn't, you're looking at the corner, and right there is the countdown showing 10 seconds. There's no way that I can give him an 8 count, evaluate if he's good or not, call the fighters to the center ring, and have a punch being thrown before the final bell rings. And since there's no way he can get hit again, let it go to the bell, let him go to the corner, and go to the scorecards. That's my opinion.
Okay. Joe?
Okay, I know Richard Steele very well and refereed a lot of major fights. And Lou Duver came up on the ring apron when he got knocked down, when Taylor got knocked down. He distracted Taylor by yelling at him, you know, and coaching him. He got up on the ring apron, and Richard was asking Miller Taylor, "You okay to continue? You okay?" And Miller was looking at Lou Duver. He wasn't paying attention to the referee, and being that he wasn't paying attention to what the referee was asking, that he said, "Well, he's in a concussive episode. You know where he's at. Let me wave her up and stop it." But now there's one thing that happened in that round that I've never talked about this publicly, but I will today. Because I never knock any referee, never did, and never will. But one thing, if you know that a referee, as a referee, that you're not the referee today, and you know when you send a fighter to a neutral corner, you score a knockdown, you're supposed to stay in that corner, right? Now when Richard is counting, he's looking over his shoulder to make sure that Chavez remains in that neutral corner. But if you gotta look at that carefully, Chavez did stay in the corner. He was out of that corner. And what he's supposed to do when the fighter gets out of the corner?
Off the count.
Stop the count, put him back.
You stop the count, you get back in the corner. When you get back in the corner, you pick up your count when you left off at, right? Okay, so that didn't happen. Chavez was out of the corner. Richard was looking, and he sort of, nobody's in the corner. You should stop this count right there, and you say, wait a minute, get back in the corner. If we got him in the corner, the bell would have run.
Great point, and I'm glad you said something about voodoo. And here's why. See, back then you didn't have to go to the inspector to tell him to go tell a referee to stop it. Lou Duva disqualified his fighter when he climbed on the apron of the ring.
Yes, he did.
So all else would happen is not void. It's done. And after the fight, what Richard Steele did when Mildred Taylor had to go to the hospital, he was seriously injured. He was messed up. And this is what I'm talking about. People make crucial decisions at a crucial time. It might not be favorable to the people who want them to win, but in the long haul, you have to respect the decision. And I'm going to tell you, since you want to talk about a controversial call, Mills Lane, Frankie Randall, and Julio Cesar Chavez too, on the headbutt. Frankie Randall and Julio Cesar Chavez butted heads. Julio Cesar Chavez was cut straight down the middle, blood gushing all over his face. Mills Lane told Chavez to box. He turned his back and shook his head, no. He said, fight. He said no. So he ran to his corner, Mills Lane came over and stopped the fight. Now, we all know when a fighter turns his back and when you tell him to fight and he shakes his head no, he's disqualified. But only not was he not disqualified, they allowed Flipper Mansky, who was the ringside physician, to come up on the apron of the ring, stop the cut. They said, is he going to be able to continue? He said, no, he's not going to fight. So they took the fight to the sport card. So the WBC rules at the time was the fighter that got headbutted, if he had a cut, the other fighter will get the 1 point taken away from him. That 1 point that got taken away from Frankie Randall that night caused him to lose his title. If they would have stopped the law of the action and went to the scorecards, Frankie Randall would have won on the draw because he was champion of the world and he would have kept the WBC belt.
Okay,
So
well, let's move on.
That's controversy.
That's a great story, though. It's a great story. Thank you for sharing.
There's a lot of angles to it, but Julio Cesar Chavez was involved in that fight.
Right, as well as this Meldrick Taylor fight. Chris, do you have a comment on that?
I got a little comment. I'm not going to say anything about Richard Steele. Richard Steele is a phenomenal referee. There's a lot of things, like Mr. Cortez mentioned, that played into that stoppage. Okay, just like when he got dropped and Duva came on the apron. At the time, they didn't have the clappers. If you go back and listen to the audio, there's no clappers. That red light, where's your notification that the round is about to end? So if I'm examining that fight, even though that red light could be on in the corner, he wasn't paying attention to that. So you just had a perfect storm for that bad situation. As a referee, hey, it happens as a fan. You may not want to see that, but it's a messed up situation for any official to be. As a fan, would I want the fight stopped? No. But as a referee, you did the best you can on the boom play the hands that you dealt with. So, and then when he asked him, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And you looking, this is why when I go in the locker room, I tell the fighters real quick. I said, if you get knocked down, do me a favor. Don't look to your cornerman, don't look into the crowd. Look at me. Got a short amount of time to gauge are you fit to continue or not. I say that every time. So we don't have that mental.
No, Chris, thank you so much. If you would pass the mic down here, because that's the first time I've heard of that particular story, that Meldrick was looking at Lou Duva, who jumped, which would make Lou Duva the person who caused the problem, right? Okay, so I want you all to be thinking of any questions you might have. We're going to give you some time for a Q&A at the end. We're not there just yet. You have one already. Hi. So, all right. Yeah, we're going to give you some time here.
I want you guys to ask me about the Mayweather and Big Ortiz fight. Ask me a question about it.
Yeah, I'll let you take it off. I'm not ready yet. Okay. Oh, you're going to take that? Okay. Okay, so this next topic comes up all the time. I was asking people about questions they might have. And this is going to be something Steve is really interested in, but I'd like to start with Jesus. Jesus, you got the younger fighters that you're working with, the younger generation, you're with them all the time. And I know you know a lot of the old history as well. How do you think fighters are different today than from the older school fighters, if at all?
Well, it's definitely a difference. I think in the past, there was more of a leadership, parenting, and more respect for when a fighter looked to a coach. And nowadays, I call it the black and white era. Everything's so quick, fast, and if you don't like hearing criticism, you can just replace somebody. Just like you can get somebody on the phone. You can go to a new coach, you can go to a new gym if you don't like the way you feel. And because of that, no loyalty anymore, no discipline. And so the fighters are different. And, obviously, the older coaches, they have these fighters as some world champions, they're more disciplined, that's why they're champions. The majority of the work, you go to gym to gym, that I had the pleasure of working the whole state of Florida, and we've been well over 200 gyms, and different coaches and different fighters. You can see the difference. There's a huge difference. The way they're getting taught now compared to the way it was back then. A lot of people think they can just go online and become a coach. It's not that easy. You can't look at videos and learn this overnight. It takes a lot of years, dedications. A lot of younger people are hesitant to listen to people and their peers that's older to take information in. And because of that, the person that suffers the most is the person that's physically in the ring taking the punches. Because they're just a result of the person that leads them to that path. If that person does that, like Chris says, educates himself, studies before the vet, these coaches don't do that nowadays. It's disappointing as a promoter, as a fighter, as a referee, as a judge, as a fan of the sport, when I have to deal with coaches that don't even have hand wraps, don't even know the rules. I'm seeing sparring that these kids attack each other in their own gyms. The coaches don't even go inside to educate them, tell them why they're doing it. There's no breakdown. There's no education. There's who's the best at that time of the moment. And because of that, a lot of people get hurt. Because unfortunately, a lot of people look at it and say, oh, you're talking down to us. No, I'm educating you how to get better. If you want me to be a good promoter, I'm assuming you want me to educate myself how to do that. Just imagine if I did a show last night, if there was no water in the locker rooms, no gloves, the commission can't start the show, the ring collapsed because I didn't attack the ropes up, that'd be a failure, right? So these coaches are failing their fighters when they don't do their due diligence to study the sport to help that fighter win and protect the fighter. And that's what I feel is different nowadays compared to the older guys. They craft themselves, they educate, they talk coach to coach, talk to each other to learn. Boxing, from all other sports, it seems to be one coach for one fighter. You go to MMA, kickboxing, everything, there's multiple coaches because everybody wants to benefit and knowledge to help that one fighter. Now he's my guy, or that's it. All the coaches are hesitant to do it.
You might be starting to see a little of that change. I'm noticing you got strength and conditioning coaches now in boxing. You got nutritionists. So I think there is more of a team approach now.
And a middle to upper level. No, I'm talking about the starting part, the lower levels, where it matters, where the people are getting hurt. Whereas, it shouldn't be, I'm a true believer, I respect the sport too much to put a guy that's 0-6 versus a 9-0. I don't need their money, they don't have to fight on my show. I see it all the time. But that being said, if you're going to do this right, you need to educate yourself, and a lot of these coaches are not taking the effort to do that.
So the fighters are different today, you're saying, because they're not willing to learn, and then there are also a lot of coaches out there who really aren't qualified to teach them even if they were willing.
It's a huge part of it. You can see it now, a lot of the top stars have older coaches and mentors.
Okay, if you would, please pass that over to Joe. Joe, what's your perspective on that? Fighters today compared to fighters of the past, how are they different?
Well, one of the things I'm going to say is that, like a lot of trainers, the younger trainers, and some of them have never even fought themselves. Back in the old days, we call them a gym rat, right? You be around the gyms all the time, and they didn't know anything. You get guys like Arnold, who's been around boxing, he knows boxing inside out. He's one of the better trainers out there. But some trainers, just because they hang around the gym, they start training these young kids, they never fought themselves. And then whoever gave them a license to be a trainer, I say we should have a system in place that if you're going to get a license as a trainer, you got to get a certification course. You got to be certified to be a trainer. Not just anybody should get a license. So I'm applying as a trainer, you give you a license. The commission should not give you a license. You're not qualified for it. So I think trainers have to be trained the proper way to be certified.
Okay, Steve, what would would you add to that?
Well, I agree 100% with what everyone has said. Great points. Today, the generation today, everything they want is shortcut. I want to take a shortcut. I don't want to put in the work. I want to be great, but I don't want to work for it. I want to talk about it. Well, in reality, the definition of a shortcut in boxing is a quick trip to nowhere. That's what I've always preached. People have heard me in the gym say that. That's what you got to put in the work. You got to sacrifice. You got to want it. You can't be a part-time fighter. Today, I have a fight twice a year, and after each fight, the first words are, thank God. The second words are, I got to go on vacation. I had fighters throughout the years that would fight, train hard for a fight, have a big title fight on a Friday or a Saturday night. I'd tell, for example, Freeman Barr, get lost for the week. This guy would drive up on Monday night and try to sneak in the gym and train. I'd chase him out of there. He'd come back Tuesday. I'd chase him out of there. He'd come back Wednesday and say, can I at least stay and watch? So, you know, this guy we were 21 years together, and it's a relationship that a trainer and a fighter build together to be professional. I see fighters today, they come into the scale and they're 4, 5, 6 pounds overweight. Well, it didn't happen in the old days that much. There was seldom overweight. People gave the promoter, and it makes today's promoter so difficult to put a show together. A person will give a promoter his list of fighters, he'll give the weights, he'll agree to it, promoter plans on it, the guy shows up way overweight, puts him in a box, or he cancels at the last minute because he stubbed his toe. Should have called a tow truck.
There's the first joke.
Disappeared on a promoter, and we put all his effort into making a great show, and you're trying to destroy it. And then you wonder, what's wrong? The fighters today talk. They run so much, they just run their mouth, not their legs.
So you're saying, Steve, then the fighters today just aren't as committed, maybe, or
Right, there's no
dedicated.
commitment, discipline's lacking.
Okay.
Knowledge is lacking, desire is lacking. They want to be great without work. That's the bottom line, basically. Most of them. There's exceptions, but the exceptions are the ones that go to the top.
And once you train.
Right. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, so if you would just quickly pass that down, I know that Aaron has something to add to that topic, and then we're going to move into our Q&A session.
Well, I like to say that all of y'all, right? I'm going to use myself as an example since I'm the youngest trainer to train a heavyweight champion of the world. When I was young, I got my start around the greatest of all times, Muhammad Ali. There is a thing called OJT, on-the-job training. And then there is a term called SWU, Sidewalk University. And yes, people said, have you boxed? Yes, I boxed oranges and I boxed apples. You know the tree? Those apples that fell to the ground? I knew how to pick up the good ones that hit the ground. But the trouble is the fundamentals of boxing is lost. The teachers now, I was taught fundamentals, and number 2, styles, and number 3, how to condition a fighter. See, styles make fights. Back in the day, if you fought this gym over here, you knew the trainers only could fight one kind of style. You see, this gym over here, they fought, the trainers only could train one kind of style. But when you're good, you can train all kinds of styles. It's because you can master the fundamentals of each style. And then you condition. Now you talk about sports training. I'm going to tell you this here. You know, sports training is so specific, is that a coach that don't understand these things, what running does, how the cardiovascular affects the body, and how it will help a fighter in the ring, and what that purpose is for. Number 2, skipping rope, another cardiovascular training device that are used for boxing. Is used to attack your heart, your agility, and things like that. See, your body is composed of two different types of fibers. Fast twitch fiber and slow twitch fiber. One for speed and the other one endurance. And as you're training and conditioning, you're always attacking those two fibers.
Okay,
And
so
then your
Aaron,
strength comes along with that over a period of time because practice is a complex procedure.
so the young trainers today don't know this. They're not passing it on. Is that what you're saying?
No, because back in the old days, the old guys wouldn't let young I was blessed. And I know I'm God blessed to be around all the great fighters that I was around young, that had no problem coming up and teaching you, explain how to do this and how to do that. I'm going to tell you, when I first tried to get a license in New Jersey, Jersey Joe Walcott was the commissioner at the time, and Bob Lee was the deputy assistant. So they weren't going to give me a license because I was too young. Slim Jim Robbins, who taught me the trade and taught me the business, basically. So they weren't going to give me a license, a second license, where you're talking about you have to be able to train. So they sent me over. They said, go over there and talk to Jersey Joe. So when I went over there to talk to Jersey Joe started laughing. He said, well, they wouldn't know a left hook from official. That's the first thing he told me. So the second thing he told me, he said, well, how do you jab? He held his hand up. I had to show him how to jab. He said, now, how do you stop it? What's the defense to that jab? Then he said to me, he said, let me see you throw a jab right hand. So I threw the jab right hand. And then he asked me, he said, how do you stop it? What's the defensive move to counter that if it's thrown at you? I told him. He said, well, how do you stop a left hook? I showed him. He said, well, throw one. I showed him. And then he said, well, it looks like you're all right. Go over there, kick your age up 5 years, and you're going to be all right.
That is on-the-job training right there. You had to demonstrate that you could do it, and that's what's lacking today. I keep hearing that across the board. Okay, Chris, do you have anything to add to that topic, the difference between the older fighters and the younger fighters?
Just one real quick. I just think you have today versus the past. You have rights versus privileges versus obligations and responsibilities. And it's like my man said earlier about the microwave. Everybody wants a shortcut. See, your best home cooked meal came in a slow cooker, not a microwave. So once that bad boy marinates and gets all tender, it's ready to go. With a microwave, you're not going to get the same substance. And everybody wants to try to get ahead of the line without trying to perfect their craft. If a fighter today can only tell me about Floyd Mayweather, then they ain't studying hard growing up. Okay, who did Floyd Mayweather study? See, you have to go back a little bit further. You want to find greatness. See, Floyd Mayweather turned his thing into a business. Great what he does, but he's a business. Let's go back to Ray Leonard's, the Roberto Reyes. Let's go back a little further than that. You know, Marvin Hagler, and Hers and all that. So it just, we have to go back down to basics. And as long as we still have people like Steve Canton able to partake his knowledge to the younger generation, and TK taking that on, and so far Mr. Snowell doing the same thing, we'll be all right. Just, there should be some type of on-the-job training or some type of internship or apprentice when it comes to handling these young adults. Because you're not just training them for boxing, you train them also in life. They can spend a lot of their time with you. So.
Thank you, Chris. Great points. Okay, we're going to start. Thank you. We're going to start our Q&A session here. So if you have a question, just come on up here to the center, and I'll hand you this mic. Yes, sir.
How you doing? You made a statement, Joe, that you never want to criticize another official. Bullshit. I grew up watching Friday night fights and make that stare afterwards with my dad, who was an amateur boxer in New York. And it was not fun watching boxing. Every little thing that went on, what do you see? Who landed the harder shot? Who's winning right now? I couldn't watch a fight to enjoy it. It was an exercise in minute by minute, second by second, breaking it down. And by the time the round was over, I want to know right now, who's winning this fight? And it took me, I never intended to get into boxing. I was always a fan. And I was watching a Florida fight. And at the time, I was working in Tallahassee with the state of Florida. I called, I said, who's in charge of boxing? And they said, the fella. I called them up and I said, I don't know where you're getting these judges from, but their heads are up their ass. They don't know what they're doing. You think you can do better? Yes. I put in 850 rounds from the PAL gym in the Keys to the Panhandle until a year and a half later I got my license. My first big fight was Coconut Grove, the Freedom Fighters from Cuba, Don King event. And there were like 8 championship fights or something. I mean, 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 2 o'clock in the morning. So you talk about endurance.
What was your question for the panel, actually?
I won't be this long when I do my induction. My question for the panel is, when you're watching the judges, and you take a lot of hits, believe me, just like some referees, and you see an egregious score, I mean a 10-10 with a knockdown, whatever, what do you think? The first thing you think is that judge is screwed up or whatever. As a fan, you think this judge is corrupt. So he's on the tape. That was growing up. It was always you were on the tape or you were doing something wrong. As a judge, I look and I'm going round by round whether you're off the wall or there's something wrong. What do you think as a fan when you see a 117, 111 and a draw with 2 other judges?
That's a great question. Let me take that, Mike.
I'm done.
Okay, that's a great question. And we've got a story, a very funny story, that Bob and Steve want to relate. But before we relate that story, what's your response to what the gentleman just said? Talking about when there are bad decisions. When there are bad decisions, it looks like the judges. Yeah, it can. No, this is to the panel. Anyone on the panel. When there are bad decisions, it makes the judges look bad. It makes the sport look bad. What do you say to that?
I agree with that as a fan when I first started. Didn't understand it. But throughout the years, when I had, like I said, put multiple hats on, and I learned for 12 years, going up and down the road, being a referee and a judge, the criticism people get, and that's not the moment. We're seeing it for that minute, that round, that particular time. We're not thinking ahead, 10 rounds in, 6 rounds in, who's going to win, 3 rounds in, it's damage. You're just doing it per round. Now, that being said, like there was earlier, there's different styles of fighting. Well, different styles of refereeing and judges based off of what that person came from, if they came from a different city, or from a different style, or different states. So everybody's different. So people are studying, they might like an aggressive fighter. Some people like counter fighters. So because of that, it's going to have different scores based off of what they judge and based off of their eyes. You know, and so it's easy for us as fans to criticize it. But to that particular person dedicates their time, their effort. A lot of these people, believe it or not, from the amateurs all the way to the pros, they don't get paid a lot of money for this. The grief they get if they do something right or wrong is crazy. The reason why they do it is because they're passionate and love it. Because it's definitely not for the money. So it's easy to say that you should have done this. But put yourself in their shoes. When you travel 2-3 hours a week, leave your wife, your family, to judge a fight just so you can get talked down to or get treated disrespectful, how do you doubt it? That's why people say, oh, why is not no referee? Why is not a new judge? Well, please, don't say it. Be a solution. Raise your hand up and volunteer. Trust me, they need the help. They don't want to drive every week, do it every show. So, but I have nothing but respect for them, for the sport. And that's how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jesus. All right, so we have a story here that we want to hear. Steve and Bob, tell us the story.
Some years back in the Bahamas, we had a promotion with 2 title fights on it. We had made an agreement when we went over there to the Bahamas. This so happened to be the first ever pay-per-view event in the Caribbean islands. The fight was televised on pay-per-view for the first time. So, making the deal with the local promoter, I made sure that Bob Alexander, who I did every show with as my announcer, whether it was state or anywhere else, I said, well, I want Bob to be the ring announcer for the title fights. And Bob was excited it was going to be his first trip outside of the U.S. And because it was a title fight, and I had just a little bit of pull, so to speak, that you're not supposed to have, I requested the IBO to bring my buddy here, Joe Cortez from Las Vegas, as a referee, because we needed to have a reunion. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. And we made plans that when the fight took place in the Bahamas, we'd be together, we'd come back here to Fort Myers, or there to Fort Myers, we're in St. Pete. Joe was going to go out on my boat with me, we're going to fish, we're going to have fun, we're going to spend the weekend together. And on Tuesday morning, I'm taking Joe to the airport to go back to Las Vegas. That was the backdrop of that. By the way, one of the 2 title fights was Joe's 100th title fight. It was a milestone that night. And when we went there, all hell broke loose. And I'm going to we'll have 2 mics over here, one for Bob, one for Joe. And we also brought Lou Tabbitt, right, as a judge with you.
There you go,
He came
Bob.
along. Okay, so I was having a reunion. I had 2 fighters fighting for world titles on the same show. We were doing a pay-per-view event in the Caribbean islands. I had the best ring announcer in the world, Bob Alexander. I had the great referee, all together, right? Great weekend. Well, these guys will tell you what happened on that great weekend. So Joe and Bob each have a mic. I'm going to back up.
Okay, I'm going to start by saying that duty to the referee when we get to an event is to check out the ring, make sure the ropes are tight and everything is correct, right? And I've been that way. I've been seminars throughout the years. The one thing I always check the ropes, the canvas, and everything. Anyway, we got to the Bahamas, and the thing was that when we got to this arena, it was already the day of the fight, but they took me there. The whole lesson that I learned that night was a hard lesson to learn. And I learned a lot from that because what I'm going to tell you, you guys not going to believe the story. You never heard this in your life, you wouldn't even believe what happened. The arena was sold out, okay? I get there, I go inside, I get into the ropes, get under the ropes, check the ring out. I said, wait a minute, there's no damn padding on this ring. It's a canvas, but no padding. I said, hey, what's going on? What were you doing?
Tim, where you at?
I said to myself, well, something is not right here. I'm going to let these fighters fight if there's no padding on this ring. And the promoter said, Joe, the place is sold out. I said, I don't care. There's no fight going to take place. Not on my watch. When these fighters with no padding, the guy gets knocked out, gets hit. Hardwood? No way in the world. What happened, John?
What happened is that the promoter sent his goon squad back to his house, and they used box cutters, and they cut up the pink and black carpeting in his patio, and rolled it up and brought it back to the arena. That was the padding they were going to use under the ring.
Meanwhile, the fight is being held, the whole show is being held about 2 hours already, because the place is sold out. I would not let these guys run until there was some padding in that ring. If they didn't go get that cup, I don't know what the hell would have happened. We probably would have not left the island alive. And the pay-per-view, the top of pay-per-view is time going on. Go ahead.
Well, let's go back a few hours before all this. Let's go back to the hotel, okay? I'm walking around downtown Nassau having a blast. I'm enjoying myself, I'm shopping, I'm taking pictures, the usual touristy stuff. I get back to the room, it's like, okay, I got a few minutes, I can relax, then I'll start getting in my tux and get ready to go to the show. Next thing I know, the phone's ringing, and it's Steve. He's on the phone. He says, I want you to do something. He said, I want you to stay in your room. We've got a controversy going on between us and the promoter. He said, you stay in your room, wait to hear from me, and while you're waiting, if you have any clothes that are in a dresser drawer, you search them. If your clothes are still in your suitcase, you search them. Search them for what? In case they planted drugs in there to make sure that we don't leave the island. What? I came over here to bring announce a fight, not do Mission Impossible 3. And then it gets worse. He calls me back an hour later and says, we're still trying to figure something out. You may not even be able to take your stuff with you. We may have to haul ass out of this hotel, jump on a boat, and sail back to the United States. I'm like, I want to go home right now. I don't want to stay here anymore. Thank God they got the controversy settled, but I don't know if Joe remembers this or not, but we get in they sent a limo, an actual full-stretch limo, to pick up the officials to go to the arena. Well, I jump in with them because I need a ride there. Little old fella in there, he's probably, I don't know how old he was, probably about 80 years old, and he's wearing one eye patch. We take off in this limo, and it's like a ride at Disneyland. He's doing about 85, 90 miles an hour down these winding roads in the Bahamas. I'm sitting in the back of the limo with Joe, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is great. I'm going to die next to referee Joe Cortez in the Bahamas. That was just getting to the arena, okay?
Anyway, they got the carpet in, two off the canvas. Meanwhile, everybody wondering what the hell's going on here. They removed the canvas. They got this carpet, laid the carpet down. There were 10 guys in there putting this patting the carpet from the living room from the promoter's house. They put it in there and then put the canvas on top of it. And they said, okay, Joe, test it. I got in the ring. I tested it out. I said, you know, I said to myself, it's not 100%, but you know what, it's better than nothing. I mean, it was like this, instead of being like this, at least an inch, it was like maybe half an inch. We settled for it. We settled, we'll take it. I had to do 2 championship fights that night. I want you to tell them what time it took place. The first fight, and what time, and what time took place, the second fight.
Okay, so we'll get to that in 1 minute. One more little quick story here. It's important to Steve. So we get ready to start the show, and the local Bahamian promoter says to Steve, your announcer can sit back and just watch the show. I'm using a local announcer tonight. Steve said, we had an agreement that my announcer was going to do at least the title fights. He said, well, I've got this local guy. I got to use him. Steve said, well, if that's the case, then I hope you have a great show because we're leaving. Guy's eyes open wide, like, really? You're going to leave over that? And Steve said, I'm not going to do a show unless my announcer does the 2 title fights. He looked at his 2 champions, 2 future champions that are that night, and he said, start packing your stuff, we're leaving, we're out of here. Oh, wait, hold on, don't do that, the promoter says. So he comes back and he says, all right. He says, what if we use the local guy to do the undercard, your guy does the 2 main event fights? Okay, we can live with that, that's fine. But first I had to go to the Bahamian head of boxing to get the bout lineup, find out who's fighting who and all this nonsense. So I go to this guy and say, sir, I need to get the bout lineup from you. And he's sitting there in the front row, he looks at his cohorts, he looks this way, he looks at me, he goes, bout lineup. I get that from you, right? and it went from there. Okay. So tell him, Steve, about what time we did these fights.
Well, we had 2 title fights as we talked about. Stephen Frank won his world title on one day, and the next day, Freeman Barr defended his world title, or won his world title because it was 2 different days. We finished what, about 2 in the morning. And the 2 fighters who were teammates and good friends joked, and Steve Frank always told Freeman, I won the world title the day before you, even though it was the same show.
That was like you never heard a story like that. You think it's a joke. You think that it was like a joke. I mean, to this day, I still can't believe that happened to us that night. And that we left the island alive.
We got to the arena and we got out of the limo, walked past the box office. I look over just glancing. I see a submachine gun laying on the counter inside the box office. And I'm thinking, we're in a foreign country. They can do whatever the hell they want over here. I'm scared.
I want Steve to say now what happened about the paycheck that night.
There you go.
Yes, well, what happened now after all this? The promoter says, we don't have the money to pay you guys.
Wow.
And I said, we will get paid. So what happened was, to backtrack a little bit, this particular promoter had also a very bad reputation of rolling a certain American promoter before this, putting him in a hospital and taking his money. So he had that reputation. We're facing all this. The guy that I told him we're not going to fight, you know. Anyway, so I told Joe and the guys, you catch the plane that was scheduled to be on, and you go home. So my reunion with Joe, he was at my house, on my boat, detailed my car, had fun with the family while I'm over there in the Bahamas, where John Dodano decided to stay with me because he was representing the IBO, and Butch Flansburgh, he was with the NBA, which was the Steve Frank fight, and Butch Flansburgh got paid in funny money, Bohemian money, and took off like he's supposed to, not knowing that in the States it's not worth much. Okay, so he's out of there, and the only one left is John Dodano and I, and the only reason John stayed is because he didn't want me to be there alone, figured I'd never come home if he didn't babysit me. Because I said we're getting paid. So what we had to do, knowing the background, knowing the promoter, knowing what happened to the other promoter, we checked out of the hotel like we were supposed to. Except John and I moved to a different hotel and checked in for the weekend under different names. Now, Monday morning we go to the commissioner's office who calls in the promoter. He's sitting there. And John is all dressed up in his Italian silk suit and his nicely polished black shoes and looking sharp. And the commissioner looks at us and looks at each other. Well, he just doesn't have the money. And John puts his foot up on the guy's desk and just looks at him kind of stern and says, oh, I suggest that you pay the man what's due to him. They looked at John, both of them. They looked at each other and says, okay. Now what happened? We'll get the money together. We want you back in the office here at 4:30 this afternoon, and we'll have the money for you. Well, I told John, it's not the end of the story yet. We're going to be a little careful here because they'll give us the money, they'll follow us out of there, and do what they did to the previous promoter and take their money back. But the other thing is, we go there all prepared anyway, so we go at 4:30. They're real friendly, okay, we understand, we screwed up, here's the money. I look at the money, and it's Bahamian money, knowing that at 4:30, the local Bahamian currency office closes. So you can't convert it until the next day, which means we would have to stay overnight to convert it to Bahamian money, and they know that. So they left, figuring we're going to be stuck there another night, they'll catch up with us later. Well, they didn't know that Ray Minus, the Bahamian senior, was a good friend of mine, and his wife ran the currency department in the Bahamas. So I called Ray at his house at 4:35, and I said, told him what the problem was. He said, you come down here to the currency office, my wife will open it up, and we'll convert the money. I said, okay, so we race over there, we change it to American money. He calls a police friend of his to give us a police escort to the airport and catch the plane out of there that night. Then he called the airport and had it held on the runway for 20 minutes for us to get there. We get on the plane, and John Madonna was sweating profusely, and he looks at me, he says, I think we made it. We get home from that, and like I said, one day with Joe, before I take him to the airport, I found out all what he did at my house. My boat, the car, all my stuff, right? Okay, so I have this money now, so I wired Steve and Frank his money. I had the money for Freeman Bar. We all got paid, right? And then I find out after the fact that Butch had funny money. What am I going to do with this money? I said, well, I'm going back in a couple of weeks for another deal. Give me your money. I'll convert it when I'm there and bring it back. So about 2 weeks later, I got Butch's money, so everybody got paid eventually. Now, Joe, you had someone there?
Like I said, it was, amen, we made it out of there alive. It was a story, I mean, it's too good to be true. I mean, who believes that something like that would happen to us? That's an experience. We could write a whole book, do a whole movie about that.
When I got off the plane in Miami, Florida, I walked down the runway, I kissed the tarmac, and I was home in the United States of America.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Great story, guys. Okay, everybody, we're out of time. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's have a